From the Blues Hotel Collective, welcome to Blues Moments in Time, where every groove holds a memory and every moment echoes the truth of what came before. Today, we rewind the reel, trace the footsteps, and revisit the chapters that shaped the blues. Here is our host, Kelvin Huggins.
Welcome to Blues Moments in Time, the podcast dedicated to exploring the rich history and cultural significance of blues music. Today we're dialing in on January 13 and tracing how it echoes through the blues world, from prison stages to Chicago studios, from East Texas birthplaces to modern educators. This date has stories to tell. So let's start with the cultural landscape. On January 13, 1968, the spotlight swung behind prison walls, where Johnny Cash stepped onto the makeshift stage at California's Folsom Prison. Country on the marquee, yes, but listen closely and you'll hear the blues all over that performance. Hard time, regret, bad luck, and the thin line between guilt and circumstance. Cash sang Folsom Prison Blues not just to 2,000 incarcerated men, but through them, turning their reality into a hit record and a cultural shockwave that made prison life part of mainstream conversation. Now, 6 years earlier, on another January 13, the whole world was twisting, literally. Chubby Checker's The Twist climbed back to number one and cemented a dance craze that sprang straight out of black rhythm and blues clubs into living rooms across America. It was a moment when the movement of bodies on the dance floor broke old rules. Couples didn't have to touch. Young people could move to the way the music felt, and segregated musical ideas started to blur. Behind the pop sheen was a familiar story. Black musical innovation driving global culture, the same current that powers blues. And then in 1990, January 13 carried a different kind of charge. Douglas Wilder raised his hand and became the first elected African-American governor in US history, taking office in Virginia. For the communities that birthed the blues, that moment was a long echo of emancipation, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and the Civil Rights Movement. A reminder that the lives behind the songs were slowly gaining political voice. The blues has always been about survival under pressure. Wilder's inauguration marked one more crack in the old order those songs had been testifying about for decades. Now let's turn our attention to the political climate. Blues doesn't always name politicians, but it never ignores politics. It sings about what laws do to people. January 13, 1990, when Douglas Wilder took office, sits at the far end of a long road paved by the 13th, 14th and 15th Amendments, the so-called Civil War Amendments, that promised freedom, citizenship and the vote to formally enslave people. Those promises were undercut by segregation, voter suppression and racial terror, realities that gave us prison songs, chain gang hollers and laments about "Judge, please have mercy on me." Cash's Folsom Prison show on January 13, 1968 dropped right into that same political river, even if it never used the word policy. Singing to incarcerated men about injustice, guilt and the weight of a sentence was a quiet act of solidarity with people whom society preferred to forget. In the blues world, that perspective was already familiar, from Parchment Farm to county jails across the South. Blues musicians had been documenting how laws and lawmen fell harder on black and poor communities. So when we talk about January 13, we're also talking about how blues and its cousin genres became a soundtrack to the politics of punishment, freedom, and the long struggle for civil rights. Of course, no discussion of blues history would become complete without exploring the music itself. On January 13, 1955, a guitarist from Oklahoma, by way of California and the West Coast club circuit, plugged into the power lines of Chicago. Lowell Fulson stepped into the chess orbit and cut "Do Me Right" in Chicago for the label's Chess 820 release. This was mid-50s Chess Records territory, the same world that amplified Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf, where the sound was electric, urban, and built for crowded rooms and jukeboxes. Fulson was already a charting artist. His earlier Every Day I Have the Blues had been one of the year's top R&B records in 1950, helping define a smoother, horn-seasoned strain of post-war blues that would become a standard across the genre. By the time of that January 13 session, he was refining a sound that straddled coasts. West Coast sophistication on guitar, Chicago grit in the groove. Tracks from this era, including sides like Lovin' You, would later resurface on compilations such as Chicago Blues Volume 3, underlining just how central Folsom was to the evolution from raw country blues to polished electrified club blues. And while blues historians tend to focus on the big names and big labels, January 13 across the wider music world is full of recording sessions, live shows and releases that lean on blues DNA. From Cash's Prison set to rock and soul milestones, you can hear the blues in the way the stories are told. The notes are bent and the rhythm section stomps. January 13 is a reminder that blues history isn't confined to records filed under BLUES. It ripples through every corner of roots music. Now, January 13 has also marked the beginnings of life for some incredible blues musicians. Now, travel with me to East Texas, January 13 in 1981. Michael Wesley Wes Jeans is born just a short drive from where Freddie King first saw the light of day. The geography matters. This is Texas blues country, the same state that gave us Blind Lemon Jefferson walking dusty streets with a guitar, Lightnin' Hopkins with his hypnotic boogie, Albert Collins with his ice-pick tone, and later Johnny Winter and the Vaughan Brothers setting stages on fire. By the time Wes Jeans hit the scene, the electric Texas blues sound was a well-worn road, but he came barreling down it with fresh tyres. Critics and fans started calling him a truly genuine Texas blues player and saying he was destined to become a Texas legend, not because he was a copy of anyone, but because he understood the language, big tone, fearless bends, and that emotional intensity where every note sounded like it got something urgent to say. His birth on January 13 ties this date to the ongoing story of blues as a living, breathing art form. The tradition didn't stop with the classic chess sides or the British blues boom. It kept moving through young players like Jeans, plugging old feelings into modern amplifiers. Now, sadly, January 13 has also been a day of loss. On January 13, 2023, the blues world quietly lost a keeper of the flame, Thomasina Winslow, who passed away at the age of 57. She grew up with music in her blood, the daughter of folk musician Tom Winslow, and her relationship with song started almost as soon as she could talk. As a toddler, she was already singing backup on her father's Hey Looker Yonder, It's the Clearwater, before going on to record her own version of 1, 2, 3 decades later. Thomasina moved comfortably through blues, soul, R&B, gospel, funk, folk, and the wider African-American musical tradition, working solo and with several bands, including a duo with Nick Scatsman and the group Night Train. But her impact wasn't just on stage. She was a teacher, a mentor, someone who took the time to pass on chord shapes, tunings, and stories to the next wave of players. Students and fellow musicians speak of her as someone who significantly influenced aspiring artists, reminding us that the blues survives not just on records, but in lessons, jam sessions, and late-night conversations. Her passing on January 13 draws a bittersweet line through the calendar. On one end, new life like Wes Jeans carrying Texas blues into the future. On the other, a devoted tradition bearer like Thomasina Winslow, leaving behind a community stronger for her work. The date becomes a hinge between continuity and loss, between the blues we inherit and the blues we still have to learn. That's all the time we have for today's episode of Blues Moments in Time. January 13 gave us Chicago studio sessions, prison stages, New Texas firepower, and the quiet dedication of a blues educator. Join us next time as we keep tracing the days, the names, and the stories that make up the long, winding history of the blues.